My name is Jimmy, Senior Pastor for the Living Word Worship Center, and I would like to leave a nugget with you about why you should bring your tithes and offerings into the storehouse, or bringing your tithes and offerings into your church. One of the most obvious reasons is that there would be meat in the house of God. In other words, to provide provisions for the vision of your ministry. But I don't want to talk to you about that today. I want to talk to you about another reason. Jesus said in Matthew 23:23, Jesus said to the Pharisees and Sadducees, you pay tithes, these ought ye to have done, and not leave the other undone. What Jesus was actually saying is that the Pharisees and Sadducees were giving certain herbs to the church, but failed to give according to the vision of the ministry. Like oftentimes we do, we see others do in our churches, that they'll bring certain things to the ministry, but they won't bring the things that the ministry need. They won't provide the things that the ministry need according to the vision. Just to kind of add to that, Jesus did not criticize the Pharisees for paying their tithes, but he was actually commending them for doing what they were doing. But he said it was something they ought to do. The word ought express an obligation or duty. So the reason I want to talk to you, one of the reasons that I want to express to you, is that we need to feel a obligation, or to fulfill an obligation to our church. With that being said, Jesus said again, you ought to have done this. You ought to have brought these tithes into the storehouse and met the need of the church. The word ought has three meanings. Number one, obligation or duty. In other words, he ought to pay his debts. Number two, desirability, as in you ought to eat more slowly. And then number three is expectancy and probability, as in I ought to be through or done with this project by Monday. Each one of these meanings put an obligation upon the Christian. It is desirable for him to pay his tithes. He is expected to pay his tithes, and he has the duty to pay his tithes. So with that being said, one of the reasons that you should bring your tithes and offerings into the storehouse or into your ministry is to meet an obligation in your ministry and in your church. All right. God bless you. And this was a golden nugget about tithes and bringing your tithes and offerings into your church. Bye-bye.